All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sarah Kelly, and I am the Executive Director of the Worcester Music Academy. And joining us today, we have David, one of our fabulous violin teachers, and Patrick, one of our fabulous cello teachers. And then our other helper today is my assistant, Marie. She will be joining us and posting lots of things in our chat feature. So if at any point in time during today's session you have any questions that we haven't answered already in our presentation, feel free to just post those in the chat feature, and we will make sure that we answer those either throughout or at the end of our session today. Speaking of today's special session, we are offering a special offer today for those who are watching us either live or after the fact. If you do end up signing up for violin or cello lessons, you will get 50% off of your registration fee, which is usually $50, so it would just be $25. And in addition, you would get 10% off of your first month of lessons. And this offer is valid for 1 week, so between now and next Saturday. And we'll repeat this again at the end in case you were just catching us at the end. So before we start going into more details about violin and cello, I just wanted to give you a brief overview of who we are and what we offer. So we are a community music school located in downtown Worcester, although currently due to COVID, we are doing all of our programming online. But we primarily offer private lessons on a whole bunch of instruments, not just violin and cello. And we also offer some fun online classes. And we will be posting links to the information about our private lessons and our classes on the chat feature. So we have private lessons. It really depends on which plan. We have several different plans you can choose from, and all the information about the rates will be on our private lesson page. So I encourage you to check that out. This is also our 10-year anniversary, so we've been around for a little while, and we would love to have you join our musical family. If you are interested in something other than the violin and cello, we have done other sessions like this before, and you can watch videos about those online. Just go to our Facebook page or our YouTube page. We've done one about piano lessons, voice lessons, guitar lessons, drum lessons, and then we did also do like a general Q&A session for any question you could possibly have about our school. So we encourage you to check those out if you're interested in learning more about other instruments. So I'm going to hand this over to David and Patrick now, and I'm going to have each of them tell us a little bit about who they are and what their background is. David, do you want to tell us a little bit about you?
Yes, well, I started the violin when I was 7, and continued, and it got very serious when I was in high school, and then decided I wanted to do this for my life, my life's work. So I went to a conservatory, 4-year conservatory, and then I started freelancing as a professional violinist for many years, and I accompanied that playing with teaching. So I've been teaching ever since I got out of school, and I teach at all levels, from very beginning to advanced, and I also teach all age groups. I've taught as young as 5 and as old as probably late 50s, early 60s. So, the only requirement is a serious attitude and a love for music and wanting to improve. So I do have a violin here, and this is my violin. And for those that don't know, it's the range is from bottom G string. We have 4 strings. The lowest is the G string. Then we have the D string, and then the A string, and then the top string is the E string. And you notice I was plucking the strings, very similar to the way you play guitar. That's one of the ways we can play the violin is by plucking. But most people have heard the violin with the use of a bow, and that's what makes it different. And so the bow is the hair comes from horse hair, and it does have to be replaced from time to time. but it does last quite a while. And the only way one can make sound with the bow is to rosin it. And we have, let me actually get that out of my case. It looks like this. It's a cake. You can see it looks like this, and it actually rubs off right into the hair. So when we do this, I don't know if you can hear the sound of the rosin. It's not that solid. It actually comes off as dust, and it sticks to the hair, and the actual rosin grips to the strings and creates the beautiful sound we get out of the instrument. Otherwise, if we had no rosin, you wouldn't hear anything when we draw the bow. It's really the rosin that helps produce the sound. So I will put the bow to the string, and you can hear what it sounds like. I'm going to play a G major scale. Actually, I'm going to pluck it. You'll hear what it sounds like plucking. Okay, and I'll do the same thing with the bow. Okay, so so you heard from very bottom to the top. The actual top of the instrument goes far higher. It goes actually to the very end of the violin fingerboard up here. So we can actually play a note this high. One doesn't go too much higher than that. So it's quite a big range. Anyway, that's sort of an introduction to that. Did you want to follow up with another question, Sarah?
Well, why don't I have Patrick tell us a little about him first, and then we'll kind of go into more details about lessons and stuff. All right, Patrick, you're up.
Okay. So, yeah, my name is Patrick. I'm a cellist. I've been teaching at the Worcester Music Academy for about a year and a half now, I would say. And I started a bit later. I started when I was about 13 or 14 years old, and I've been hooked ever since. So yeah, a lot what David was saying was, a lot to do. It's same with the cello, where we have a bow, we can pluck the strings, and the cello is our lower range here. I'll show you a little bit how it sounds. It's a lot lower range, but also we can go up super high, all the way up here, on the fingerboard. Really, it covers a whole range, different volumes and stuff as well. So that's a great thing about the cello.
Awesome. And, David kind of touched on, why he picked the violin. Patrick, what was it about the cello that made you want to take cello lessons?
I think it was more the lower warmer tones that I really enjoyed. When I was first deciding, I was trying to pick between violin and cello, and it was the hardest decision of my life because I love both and I could only pick one at the time, but I ended up going with cello just because of the range, and you can sit with the instrument and stuff, and I really enjoyed that, and I felt comfortable really doing that.
Great. Awesome. So, why don't we start on what do you need before you can even start a lesson? Obviously, we need to get instruments. David, what would you recommend for, your setup, like a violin, a bow, what else do you need?
Yeah, well, that you hit on it. Generally speaking, when one is played for a length of time and they're very secure with continuing, I would advise actually purchasing an instrument because it's more cost effective to purchase. For the younger students, I would recommend renting because one outgrows an instrument pretty fast. The growth spurts really come quite fast. So the young ones that start 6 or 7 will be probably playing on an 8th size, And then maybe in a year or two, they'll be at a quarter, and then a half size, and 3/4, and then full size. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to be replacing these instruments, for after purchasing. That people just generally don't do that. They rent and trade up. So that when you establish a connection with a business, usually, part of the rental agreement is to trade up, and there's no additional cost. And there's also a provision in the contract for repairs, and in the event that there's any damage to the instrument. Yeah, that would be, the first step in making arrangements to rent. And I advise that even for adult students, because a life does change sometimes, or we can lose interest. I mean, it requires a lot of discipline and time, and sometimes people don't know what kind of commitments involved in taking lessons. So it probably is prudent to rent it first.
Yeah, and just along that that line, just so people know that we do are able to rent violins through our school. So if that is something you are interested in, we can certainly help you with that. Not sure we're able to do cellos yet, but it could be something we could do down the line. But there are other, plenty of shops out there that we do recommend students go to for instruments as well. And yeah, you always want to be careful. I'm just going to put it out there of buying an instrument online. If you decide I'm really going to do this, I'm going to purchase something, because unless you talk to your teacher ahead of time, you don't know what you're getting. And your instrument could very well fall apart after the first time you play it. So you just beware when you purchase something sight unseen without knowing anything about violins or cellos.
I certainly would like to back that up, because I've had that experience. Often parents think that they see something online, it looks like a violin, and it looks like a good deal, under $100, sometimes 50, and with a bow and a case and rosin and everything. It just seems like, why would you go out and rent if you can buy something for $50? Well, you get what you pay for.
Right.
Because generally these instruments are not set up well. The bridges don't fit, the curve isn't right, the nut is too high, the strings are not good. It looks like a violin, but it doesn't play like a violin. So that is so important in setup, making sure all the measurements are right. So it really does pay. As a matter of fact, I have sent students. I have talked to parents or advise parents to not return, they're stuck with the instrument if they buy it, to go ahead and rent an instrument, because it would cost too much to set them up properly. It would probably cost two or three times the cost of what they paid for the instrument to set it up properly. So it only makes sense to go out and rent an instrument. So I would advise strongly not to purchase online.
Especially cellos,
Yeah.
especially if you're trying to order online or shipping it. These are huge instruments, and they can come with like their neck snapped in half. So it's always good to go to a shop in person.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and the shops can help you, because if you're 6 years old, you're not fully grown. You don't know what size instrument you need yet. So they'll be able to, and 6-year-olds can vary in size as well. So, you never know what size you need. And the people helping you rent are the experts, and they'll be able to tell you exactly what size you need. So awesome. Okay, well, why don't we talk about, are there different styles of music you can play and learn on violin and cello? Patrick, do you want to start with this one?
Sure. Okay, so there's tons. You can almost do like every style: classical, jazz, rock, pop, blues. Recently, I've been working on a new like rhythmic side of the cello, where it's called chopping, and it's where the bow comes down and makes a stop on the strings. And you can kind of make a rhythmic sound and kind of keep it in a beat, and it's really fun. And I've been also experimenting with like Celtic music and stuff, and so there's a huge range. It's not limited to just one thing, you know?
How about you, David? What are the options for violin?
Well, I would say the same thing.
Mhm.
I personally am more geared toward classical repertoire, and I occasionally, I mean, I have played many times pop music, and as a professional, as a freelancer. But in my own practice, I do mostly classical. So I work out of the Suzuki system, and Suzuki, for those that don't know, lived for actually about 100 years. From, I think he was born 1898, and he became very well known in probably the 70s worldwide. He published many books, instruction books, and I use probably about 3 or 4 of them for beginning. They're wonderful instructional materials for beginning levels, and then I branch out to other books that get into the higher positions. It's really, this system is very good for first position, and then and just getting used to playing different rhythms and different bowings, and it varies. The styles do vary. I mean, you go from Baroque to classical, and there's some romantic composers. So, but it's all basically classical oriented. I just haven't gotten a lot into bluegrass and folk too much. But honestly, if that's something that one wants, or it's actually pretty easy once you've gotten a very firm foundation with the classical technique. So yeah, that's it's always something to explore at a later point.
Yeah, and I should just point out that we have Patrick and David, but we do also have 2 other teachers. Rebecca is another violin teacher, and Betsy is a violin and cello teacher. And for violin, for Betsy, she kind of does a lot of fiddling. So if that's something that you're interested in, she's would be kind of like the expert fiddler. So if that's something you're interested in, we got it covered for you. Um, Great. Okay, so obviously, I said at the beginning we are doing online lessons right now. Maybe let's just touch on like how to what software are you using for your online lessons? Like, are there special setups you need to do for your lessons? David, do you want to start with that one?
Yes, well, I use FaceTime, Zoom, Skype. It depends. FaceTime is for people that have Apple. So occasionally I use that, and I've had very good success with that. But I haven't had the occasion to use it recently. So, but I use mostly Skype. There are some students that use Zoom. I prefer Skype. It just, for sound, it seems to work out better for me. But Zoom is fine too.
Great. Patrick, what are you using for your lessons?
Yeah, I use Zoom, but FaceTime definitely I think has the best quality to pick up the sound. For Zoom, there's a big cutoff too, especially in the lower register. I'm not sure when I played earlier if that completely cut out, but yeah, that can be pretty difficult sometimes. But yeah, I pretty much just use those 2, and it seems to work out well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we do have one question so far pertinent to the instrument. Shoulder rests, are those recommended like from the get-go, or like what should you use?
That's a very, very good question. I do recommend shoulder rests. I personally do not use a shoulder rest. I've learned for over many years how to play without one, but I don't necessarily recommend one for students, because it does take a lot of discipline to know how to use one without raising the shoulder. And that's why why I would advise using a shoulder rest, because I never want to see hunching of the shoulder. And because there's a big gap, I will actually show you from the side. You can see the gap right here. Now, I'm not raising my shoulder, but it would be very natural for somebody that didn't know any better to play like this with a hunched shoulder, and that's not good. So unless you can support the violin on the collarbone, which is very, very difficult for people with maybe longer necks. I don't have a very long neck, so it's not such a big distance from my chin to my collarbone. So in that event, yes, it may be fine to play without one, but I would say 99% of violinists need shoulder rests, and I would recommend that. And all my students use shoulder rests, and the ones that are used are a bar style that you actually attach it to the back of the instrument, and it's like a bar that goes from one side of the instrument to the other side, and it actually has a little curve to it would fit to the contours of your shoulder and your collarbone. So yes, I would definitely recommend. There are so many choices out there. In the old days, they used little pads that were about, circular like this, and some people use sponges. So many varieties. You just have to kind of shop around to find out what's best. But most people use the bars that I described.
Awesome. Thanks, David.
Mhm.
And then another question was about specific shops for renting and purchasing instruments. So like I said, we do rent violins. But if it's something that we don't have, we can get it for you. But like for cello, we would recommend someplace like Johnson Strings. They are located in Newton, so they are a little bit farther away, but they are literally the string experts in this area. So
Yep.
and their rates are like comparable to any like local music store who's also renting instruments. But I think it's definitely worth going to Johnson Strings because, like I said, they're the experts. And, all the students we've had who've had instruments from them have had great success with their instruments. And so we would definitely point you in that direction.
And just one thing to add is that they have all the accessories. So if you want to try every possible a shoulder rest or chin rest, that's another thing. They're all individual. What feels good with one may just be very uncomfortable for somebody else. It all depends. So they have like almost a full assortment of choices out there. And that's what you would do, in the process of renting. Just one other thing I wanted to add with Johnson's, because they are not very conveniently located to Worcester. They actually have an arrangement with where you can ship a rental. If say, for instance, you're going from a half size to a 3/4. Well, you can send your half size back. Actually, what they would do is they would send you a 3/4, and then when you receive that 3/4, you can send the other one back. So there's no delay, and you can get started. So you don't have to make a trip all the way out to Newton. So that's a very nice feature, renting with them.
Excellent. Okay, so the next thing is maybe, what is the age range? Like, what is the youngest you can start the violin and the cello? Yeah. Patrick, do you want to start with that?
Sure. So for me personally, my youngest student that I've had was 7 years old. But no matter what age you are, I think after that, all the way to 100, doesn't matter. It's all about how much you really want to play the instrument, I think, and how much I guess motivation, how much you really want it. I don't know if you feel the same, David.
Absolutely. It doesn't matter, and one can make fantastic progress at any age with the right attitude.
Exactly.
One thing that does have to be added, it always helps to have, for an adult student especially, to have some sort of musical background. If they had played an instrument before and reading is something they have in their background, it makes life a lot easier. If not, it's something to work around, but that's just progress can be made very much faster when note learning is not a big issue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I would say, if you hear people starting at 2-3 years old on, their string instruments, and yes, I've seen little tiny cellos, but, obviously that might not be the right fit, for a child that young. And so, we do have a teacher who teaches some general music classes for very, very young kids, private lessons on top of it. So, that way, you're getting started learning about music, touching on kind of the fundamentals of music. And then, when the child is old enough, it would be easier to transition to violin or cello or whatever instrument it might be. But, that's what we would probably recommend for a very, very young child. We have another question that came through. Let's see. There's a person who played violin as a child and into adulthood, but had an unfortunate accident, had to relearn everything, and is looking to for a few lessons before May to practice shifting and having a looser grip on the violin neck. And she's wondering if these issues would be something that a teacher could assist her with. David, do you want to take that one?
Oh, absolutely. That's interesting that you mentioned that. I dealt with that issue recently as this morning with a student. Yes, absolutely. When you shift, you have to be very, very loose with the hand and the arm, and a lot of that has to do with the way you hold the instrument. I mean, if you're tight, gripping it very tight, you just don't have free movement. So I get into that very, very much of actually supporting the neck, the violin very much in this area. So one can come around the instrument very loosely. You can see how my thumb is nothing is really clenched onto the violin. There's free movement. So yeah, that is something that I pay a lot of attention to in training for shifting, because it should be a very, very smooth movement.
And yeah, her other question was she's looking to nail down a couple of pieces that she selected, which obviously if she brought in some pieces that she wanted to have specific help on, you could obviously work with her on that. Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah. Excellent. Great. Okay, so maybe let's talk about what the first, very generally, like what the first lesson might look like. Obviously it would be very different from like a beginner who's never picked up the violin to somebody who's had even a tiny bit of experience, or someone who's clearly more advanced. Maybe let's just talk about, very generally, what would a first lesson look like. Patrick, do you want to start?
Sure. So yeah, first off, it's about posture and I think holding the instrument and really getting settled into it. Bow hold is probably one of the first things you'll encounter when taking a lesson. This is how we hold the cello bow, where it just your hand kind of hangs down and goes over the top. I'm not sure when it comes to violin. I think your pinky's on top. It does. This, and there's different. It's different depending on the instrument, but yeah, mostly setup and posture, and just how you hold the instrument, I think, is really important. Keep your back as straight as possible. And then you can start by plucking, and then maybe starting to, have your bow on the string, doing long back and forth, open strings. So, yeah.
Awesome. And David, how about for violin?
Well, very, very much the similar principles about posture, about keeping straight, standing up straight. Actually, there's a tendency to get into bad habits playing the violin because you're holding the violin up, and it's very easy to thrust the head forward. We don't want to do that. We want to keep it up. So it's very important to keep the violin level. I would say that, and that's why the shoulder rest is so needed for some students, because that almost ensures the violin being held at a level place. And the bow grip is, for me, the first thing that I teach, that I find the most difficult to teach at first. And so what I actually teach the grip upside down, with the bow upside down. You can see the bow is supposed to be played this way, but I teach it this way because it's very easy to see how all the fingers are placed. It's very hard for me to really show on video. I don't know if I have to get a certain angle. The thumb actually does not go all the way through. The thumb actually sits on the very side, and it's bent. at all times. And then the fingers just kind of bend over the stick. And as Patrick had pointed out, the violin grip, bow grip is different than the cello. The cello grip is like this. The pinky sits on top, and the fingers. I think what's similar with the bow grip is that the fingers are generally pretty close together. So we never want to see this sort of thing where the fingers are all spread out, you know, and the pinky never sits on the. We call this the screw. This is how you wind the bow up and get more tension to the hair. We never want to be having the pinky sit on the screw. So this is the typical bow grip of the violin, where the fingers are all bent and the wrist is fairly flat. It's not. We don't want to see this. This is a common bad habit to see when I see students playing like this. Really, it's more important to have a nice loose and bent a straighter wrist. And then I get into holding the violin once that's set, and it all happens very, very quickly. I mean, in the first lesson, students are already playing, and the Suzuki system does start with the upper two strings, the A and E strings, and then as one becomes more proficient with that, then we add the D string and then the G string. So the actual first song in the book is "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star," and it starts out with a interesting rhythm, and with 4/16 notes followed by 2/8. So it's and so forth and so forth. So right away, you're forced to actually move that bow, ba, 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 bum, ba, right? So in the process of learning that, I make sure that the bow is parallel to the bridge. This is the bridge, and the bow needs to run parallel with the bridge. And so if ever I see a student playing like this or like this, we know that that's incorrect. It's got to run parallel. So those are the things that are addressed in the very, very beginning. Drawing a straight bow and using the arm and the elbow needs to actually open up and close and open up and close, as opposed to keeping a locked arm and going this way. That's something that is also a common habit that beginners get into. So it will eventually feel natural. At first, it probably doesn't feel too natural. So that's how we get started.
Awesome. Sorry, my dog Daisy wants to make an appearance. So, I think this is a good time to point out that, you have to practice, right? I think a lot of students, regardless of their age, probably mostly if this is something new that they're doing, don't always realize the amount of work that goes into learning an instrument, especially something like violin and cello. I'd say that violin and cello are probably some of the more difficult instruments to start with because there's so much to coordinate. And unlike a guitar, you don't have frets where you know where you're putting your fingers. So there's, that element as well. So, maybe how much do you guys recommend your students practice each week? David, you want to start?
Sure. Well, I would, at first, I would say, because it's introductory, probably just reviewing what's going on in the lesson. So, one could I think the important thing is practicing every day. Is the most common fault with students is thinking that they can put it off like they do with their homework to the last minute, or studying for a test. You can't. You really need to be practicing on an almost daily basis, because otherwise you kind of forget what you did during the lesson. If you start practicing toward the end of the week, then you may not have remembered anything about what you did during the lesson. And then, of course, if that happens, then you're not going to really be making a lot of progress. You have to a teacher has to kind of go through the whole thing again with you. So it's really important to almost even as close to the day, either the day of or the day after your lesson to get things reinforced. So, but I would say probably in the beginning, you wouldn't need to practice more than maybe 15 minutes to 30 minutes a day. As you progress and the pieces get longer and there are more things to think about, I would say maybe at least a half an hour a day, maybe. I would think that would be a good time commitment. But the important thing is almost daily practice.
How about you, Patrick? Do you have any specific?
Yeah, same thing. 15 minutes is a good start. And like David was saying, doing it daily too. I don't know if it's the same for violin, but since we have thicker strings, it we really have to build up the calluses and our muscle tone and everything. And after playing, after a certain time, it can get sore on our fingertips, especially if you're just starting. So yeah, just not to do like too much just when you're beginning. Like a good 15 minutes a day is perfect.
Yeah, and I'd like to just add to that as well. I think some people might think that 15 or 30 minutes I just don't have that time. You can also split it up, in the day. So if you have a 10-minute home break for homework, fit it in there, or you're taking a break from your online classes during the day or work, and you have a lunch break or something, fit in the total amount of time over the period of the day. Like, consistency is way more important.
That's wonderful advice, because that would be even more desirable, because that's reinforcement. If you can do it two or three times a day, small intervals, then you've got the added element of review, and that reinforces what you've been doing in practice.
Yeah, and I'd also just like to add that, especially if you are a younger student, as a very beginner, we definitely encourage strongly that a parent or guardian be at those lessons.
Don't come out.
Sorry, my son Jacob wants to make an appearance as well. Here you go, buddy. Because especially online, it's so much, there are certain challenges. We're just going to be honest with violin and cello in particular, starting from scratch, that a parent or a guardian really needs to be in on those online lessons. And when we're back in person, it's good to have that adult in the room. If for no other reason, if you're 6 years old, you might not remember exactly where do you put the violin or the cello, or how do I hold that bowl again. But if the parent is there or the guardian is there, and they've basically taken that lesson with you, even if they themselves are not playing the instrument, they can help you when you're practicing during the week. And that's so important, because so many times I get parents, coming to me frustrated because their child just doesn't want to practice, and they feel like they have to harp on their child about practicing. And, I don't know about you, but as a kid, I didn't particularly love practicing either. And went on to do music. So, I think you have to just be so encouraging as a parent, and know that you might have to remind your child every day to practice, even if it's not something that you want to do. But you kind of have to view taking music lessons, regardless of the instrument, as kind of like a family commitment. Yes, it's the child playing the instrument, but the parent also has to be there to encourage and help and motivate. And, we always encourage parents and students to talk to their teacher about any frustrations they're having. If maybe you need practice advice, coming up with a reward system, whatever, your teacher can always give you some good advice on like how to tackle certain challenges you may be experiencing at home. So I just wanted to add that in there as well. And I guess along the same lines is, I would say that there potentially is a bigger learning curve with violin or cello. Would you guys agree with
Yes.
on that?
Yeah.
And I think that I remember one of my sisters took violin, in kindergarten or first grade, and the sounds coming out of the violin were very unpleasant at first. And I think it can be difficult to stay motivated and focused to keep going if you're not making the most pleasant sounds at the beginning. So you just kind of have to know that there's going to be like a time period where you might not sound like, Yo-Yo Ma or, Joshua Bell or somebody, so you have to just kind of know that for a while it might be a little bit rough, but the more you practice and the more you listen to your teacher and what he or she is telling you to do, you will see that progress happen.
Patience is an important word.
Patience is very important. And Marie, are there any other questions that have popped through at all?
No questions right now, but I'll also make sure to put your contact information. So if anyone has any questions that kind of come up later, they can always give us a call. I'll send you an email. We can always get back to them.
Awesome. And David, was there anything else in particular about violin lessons or, anything that you wanted to touch on that you think is important for people if they're deciding about lessons?
The only other thing is performing. That's a very important aspect of and that actually encompasses every instrument. So, but it's that's something I would highly recommend is the recitals that the school has to offer, and twice a year. And obviously, it's going to be great when we get back into live lessons and we can perform live, and students make tremendous progress when they have a deadline. They have to get in front of people, and it's a very rewarding learning experience. So that's something that I do encourage very much. And Sarah, you've been so great in accompanying my students in the past, and that's Sarah is very proactive in working, doing some rehearsals with playing piano. And the accompaniment, so because I mean, the students can get up and play by themselves, but a lot of the pieces that they study have a piano accompaniments, and it's always nice to play with somebody else, and so that makes it more rewarding too. So and we'll be doing live performances, right? In the fairly
eventually, yeah.
Eventually, I guess. Let's be positive. It's not going to be that long.
Right. And I'll just add, you'd mentioned we do 2 recitals a year. We actually do many more than that, so there we are having opportunities for people to perform throughout the school year, probably a good 5 or 6 times throughout the school year. So, and not that you're required to perform on any of them, but we encourage you to perform at least at some point during the year as a good motivator. But yeah, we do give you lots of opportunities, and right now they are online opportunities, but like David said, thinking positive that eventually we will be able to do that in person again as well. Patrick, are there any things about the cello or anything that you think we haven't talked about?
Yeah, just the same thing. The more you play and the more you learn on your instrument, you'll be able to later on go to play in string quartets, orchestras, you name it, different ensembles and stuff, which is the most fun possible thing you can do with an instrument, I think, is playing with other people. So yeah, that's always fun.
And you might already be playing, I don't know what the situations at anybody's schools are, but in maybe normal times you have a school orchestra, and you're playing and you want to take lessons so that you can move up in your orchestra or something like that, or maybe you want to prepare for districts in all states, so those are things that we can work with you on. Or even if you're an adult and you were played as a child, or you're picking this up brand new, we are here to help you, and we want to help you get started on this musical journey. So if you are interested in signing up for lessons, we keep it pretty easy. All you have to do is go to our website. Marie's going to post a link to our registration page. All you do is fill that out. That comes to me, and then we get things finalized for you. So we'll take care of your payment online once we know what you're signing up for. We'll schedule your lessons, and then your teacher will reach out to you about how they're going to connect for the lessons. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Again, to repeat our special offer, if you sign up between now and next Saturday, which I believe is the 13th of February, you get 50% off of your registration fee, so $25 instead of $50, and 10% off of your first month of lessons. And if you're just not sure, you might be interested, you're just not sure and you're not ready to commit, that's okay too. We do offer a one free 30-minute trial lesson. So obviously you would need an instrument for that, but that is something we can offer. So if you already have an instrument or you've been playing, we can do that for you as well. Only requirement is that you give us a credit card to put on file, to put on hold. We don't charge it unless you just don't show up for the lesson. So really no commitment, and you can try it out before you sign up. So other places you can, like Marie said, she's going to put my contact information in there, so you can always email me or leave a voicemail for me at the school. We also are very active on social media. So if you are watching us on Facebook today, you probably are either a follower or like our page, but if you're not, we encourage you to do one of those so you can stay up to date on what we're posting, different events, concerts, videos, pictures from lessons, all articles, fun things like that. We are also on Instagram. We are on YouTube and have a bunch of videos that you can check out. And yeah, I think that probably covers it. So we do thank you so much for joining us today. If you're watching this after the fact, thank you for checking out this video. And we hope you have a great weekend. And we do look forward to hopefully seeing you at our school in the future. All right, thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.